When we look at Rome and America today, they appear as inevitable titans of history, monolithic powers defined by untouchable wealth and historical destiny. But that image is a historical rewrite. For over 100 years after it was first reached by Europeans, most of North America was dismissed as useless lands, ignored by explorers who were only interested in finding quick gold. Rome's origins were equally small and far more violent. It began as a tiny collection of hilltop villages above a river bend, and according to legend, its first act was the murder of Remus by his own brother, Romulus. Survival was never guaranteed. In 390 BC, a tribe of Gauls defeated the early Roman army, marched into the city, and burned much of it to the ground. If neither nation was destined to survive its first few centuries, how did these ignored and nearly destroyed settlements grow to conquer the world? Superpower status is built through a sequence of reactive gambles and opportunistic expansion, a pattern both nations would eventually use to rewrite their own futures. The first phase of growth relies on immediate regional survival, where a nation must absorb its neighbors to secure its own borders. Rome did this by uniting the Italian peninsula, but they used a strategy of absorption rather than total destruction. They transformed defeated local tribes into allied contributors, making their enemies part of the Roman machine. America followed a parallel path of rapid growth, though their greatest early gains were achieved through financial opportunism, while their rivals were distracted. In 1803, America doubled its size, purchasing the Louisiana Territory for $15 million from a desperate Napoleon. Using that momentum, the U.S. sent settlers into northern Mexico, eventually taking the remaining territories after provoking a dispute in Texas. To make the initial leap toward empire, a nation acts as a geopolitical predator, rapidly claiming surrounded land while its rivals are preoccupied with their own crises. Rapid expansion comes with a hidden, dangerous cost. It generates massive new wealth that is often hoarded by the elite, devastating the working class. Rome's new wealth was monopolized by wealthy patricians who used slave labor to farm conquered land. When the Gracchi brothers tried to pass laws redistributing that land to the poor, the Senate had them murdered. This normalized political violence and shattered the Republic, ultimately leading Julius Caesar to cross the Rubicon with his army and ignite a massive civil war. America faced a mirrored internal crisis. Westward expansion directly inflamed the nation's original sin, an economy built on the evil of slavery. The dispute over whether new territories would permit slavery reached a breaking point with the election of Abraham Lincoln, prompting the southern slave states to secede from the Union. The resulting American Civil War was the bloodiest conflict in the nation's history, a fight to preserve the Union and finally free those who were enslaved. Every growing empire must survive an internal crucible. The moment a nation attempts to eat itself is the mandatory prerequisite for projecting power onto the world stage. Once the homeland is secure, a superpower must look outward, shifting its focus toward naval dominance and global influence. Rome was forced into this evolution when it faced Carthage. To compete, Roman engineers captured a Carthaginian warship and reverse engineered it, building an entire fleet from scratch. Carthage retaliated with Hannibal's famous invasion over the Alps with war elephants, but Rome responded by taking the fight to Africa and utterly destroying their only Western rival. America found a similar pretext for expansion after a U.S. warship exploded in a Cuban harbor. They told Spain to leave the Caribbean or face the consequences. The U.S. used the ensuing war to crush the remnants of the Spanish Empire, annexing Hawaii and seizing control of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. This strategy culminated with Theodore Roosevelt's maneuvering to build the Panama Canal, an engineering feat that allowed the U.S. Navy to dominate two oceans simultaneously. True superpower status is realized when a nation's reach extends past its own coastlines to dictate the flow of power across the oceans that separate continents. During the 2nd century, Roman power reached its zenith, spanning 5 million square kilometers and connecting 3 continents under a single administration. By 1914, America had completed its own transition from an ignored frontier to the world's most robust industrial and military titan.
This power produced extraordinary cultural dividends, from the establishment of civil law to engineering miracles like running water and massive public structures. Yet the history of these wonders is inseparable from a darker reality. The same ambition that built these domes also fueled forced abductions, endless wars, and deep moral compromises. The rise of a superpower is not a story of destiny, but a violent cycle of opportunism, proving that the forces that build the modern world are often the same forces that tear it apart.